Hello everybody, welcome back to today's video. Today I wanted to go over something quite fascinating, which I believe two governorships that are up in 2026 that I believe to be very, very similar to each other. A lot of people don't really realize this, but you have a lot of governors' elections up for the 2026 elections. And there's two governors' elections that should be a lot more competitive than they are. But I'm going to explain why they're very similar and why they're going to probably vote the way they vote next year for the midterms. So, what are those two elections? Well, keep it up on a map. They're on the opposite side of the country. You have Nevada and Pennsylvania. Now, I think those two governors' elections are going to be quite similar to each other. And let me explain why. You have both of them, both states are very similar because you have both of them are swing states, right? They both voted for Donald Trump in 2024, and they both voted for Joe Biden in 2020. So they vote kind of similar. Obviously, very different ethnicities, different cultures, backgrounds, but for all intents and purposes, they're very similar states, voting habits. They vote, pretty purple. They elect Republicans in statewide, Democrats statewide. However, if you leave out 2018, Nevada has almost always and usually elected a Republican governor. Hence why they have a Republican governor right now, Joe Lombardo. Same thing for Pennsylvania. It kind of goes back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats. However, in this whole entire century, there's been, I believe, six governors' elections this year. This century. It's only gone Republican one time. They have a Democrat governor, Josh Shapiro. So they're both very skilled politicians. They're both more establishment incumbents, but they're both popular. They both have very high approval ratings in their respective states. So why I think these two races are competitive is I first laid out is that they're both swing states, right? And they both have a situation where, despite them being swing states, they tend to always elect the same party for the governor's election. And that seems to go along with what they have right now. Nevada, Republican governor, Pennsylvania, Democrat governor. So I think they're in a similar situation because, yeah, especially if you look at Pennsylvania, if you could tell right here, we'll start with Pennsylvania. You have Josh Shapiro, who in 2022 won by a landslide. He defeated Senator Doug Mastriano. I do think the margin that Josh Shapiro won by could have been a little bit smaller just because he went up against a poorly funded, like weaker, more anti-establishment Republican. But nonetheless, Josh Shapiro is still a very strong incumbent because he's won a lot. He was the attorney general for twice. He won re-election too, despite Donald Trump winning in 2016. He still won the attorney general's election, and then in 2020 he outperformed Joe Biden's margins. Did pretty well, and then obviously you saw him cruise to the governorship. There's talks that he'll run for president. We'll see. However, he's a very strong incumbent. But what's interesting is that he is facing a stronger Republican challenger, which is Stacey Garrity. If you don't know who that is, she is the Republican state treasurer in Pennsylvania. If you want to look right here, you have the governor's election. You have pretty much the only Republican running in Pennsylvania is Stacey Garrity. She is the Pennsylvania state treasurer. So she's been the treasurer for quite some time. She got elected in 2020, basically. If I could find the election, I don't know if I have it. I don't think I have it pulled up. Let me see if I can find it. Um, Pennsylvania treasurer election. Yes, so she's a strong candidate. You can see how she won by pretty much about 6 points. Did pretty well. Even won counties like Lehigh, Dauphin, etc. Counties that Republicans don't typically win. Um, strong candidate. You saw in 2020, she took when Josh Shapiro won the election for his attorney general. She was able to take out the Democrat incumbent Joe Torcella. Very narrow, but she was able to pull it off. She's a strong candidate, and then you have back to the governor's election in Pennsylvania. You have again Stacey Garrity running, but Josh Shapiro is an even stronger candidate than Stacey Garrity is, just because he's had a track record of winning a lot. Because you could tell again in 2022, he defeated Doug Mastriano by a lot. You could tell Lancaster County nearly flipped. He won counties that Donald Trump won by a lot. Luzerne County, Cumberland County, Beaver County. Those are all likely to safe Trump counties at the time. And they've trended more towards Trump since then. So he seems to be more establishment, Josh Shapiro type of Democrat. So he's able to get a lot of crossover support than most Democrats do, because both parties in Pennsylvania, excluding the governor's elections, typically win by no more than 6 points. Probably by 5. If you win by over 5 points, you did pretty well in Pennsylvania. So I personally have this election, the governor's election in Pennsylvania, going as likely Democratic. I still think it's a good news for the Republicans to run Stacey Garrity because she's a strong candidate. There's times when, candidates think that they don't have a chance of winning, but they still able to win because they're strong candidates. So I'll fill out the map how I think the Pennsylvania governor's election will go. And we'll move on to Nevada after this. But just because Josh Shapiro is a strong incumbent, I think that he will be able to since he's running against Stacey Garrity, she's a strong Republican candidate. I think that she'll be able to win pretty deep red Trump counties that Doug Mastriano, the Republican in 2022, was able to lose. I think Stacey Garrity will win Cumberland County, which is trending blue. Beaver County, she'll be able to win Beaver. And then she'll be able to pull off Luzerne and maybe Berks County. That's a pretty red county. However, it does show willingness to vote Democrat at the start of the line, like Josh Shapiro. However, I still think that since Josh Shapiro is a strong candidate, I think that he will be able to win well and pull off re-election, win bellwether Trump counties such as Erie, Monroe, and Bucks, and Northampton. He'll do better in the Lehigh Valley, and he'll be able to win some moderately Democrat counties such as Center and Dauphin. This is how I'm predicting that the governor's map will look. Maybe one or two counties is different, but I think this is what it'll look like. Just because Stacey Garrity's running, she's a strong Republican challenger. I just think that Josh Shapiro is stronger. However, you move over on the other side of the country to Nevada, very similar situation because you have the Republican incumbent Joe Lombardo who's running. We can take a look right here. Hold on a sec. You have Joe Lombardo. So in 2022 he was able to win and defeat. He didn't win by a landslide, but he won by over a point. He took out the Democrat incumbent, which is pretty strong. And again, Nevada usually votes for Republican governors almost all of the time. It's only voted Democrat once this century, the 21st century. Again, kind of similar. So it's kind of interesting how that happens. But again, it's very similar because, Joe Lombardo this year is facing a Democrat who is a strong candidate. You have Aaron Ford, which is, a typical establishment Democrat. He's the attorney general. And he is, again, strong, pretty strong. You saw in 2018, he was able to win. You saw that he did reasonably well. And then in 2022, when Joe Lombardo won, he overperformed by a ton and won by a lot. You could tell, 52-44. So you can tell, same story with Stacey Garrity. Aaron Ford's probably not going to win. However, it's good because, you run strong candidates as much as possible, the party could win. So, again, I think Aaron Ford, again, strong Democrat candidate. He was able to win Carson City, I believe. which is not typical. So, see, yeah, again, good candidate. However, again, Aaron Ford is good. Joe Lombardo is even better, which is why I think the whole falls short, just like Stacey Garrity will. And that's why I think that for the governor's election in Nevada, I think that Joe Lombardo will end up winning. I think that in order to fill out the map, you'll see in Nevada that Joe Lombardo will probably be able to win all the safe red counties in Nevada. Right here. And then you have a few toss-up areas. Since Joe Lombardo is still a strong incumbent, just like Josh Shapiro is, but on the opposite party, he'll probably be able to win Washoe County and win Carson City. And if it wasn't for Aaron Ford, he would probably win Clark County, which has seen some Republican trends. However, because Aaron Ford is a strong candidate, he'll probably be able to win Clark County very narrowly. So that's how I see the elections. Again, you can see why I think that the governor's elections in Pennsylvania and Nevada are going to be similar, just because, you have two popular governors there who govern in purple states and seem to be electable. However, they have strong challengers, which can make these races is closer than it usually would be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you like this content. I'll come back if you like some latest news in the elections, and hope you guys have a good day.